So hi everyone, this is another video of the series about frequently asked questions in stock investing. Yeah, so I'm here with Sam. Sam is our coach in Beyond Insights, and today the question that we want to explore is about why is fundamental analysis important? And usually we get these questions right from people who perhaps has had some trading experience before in either commodity futures or even index futures trading, right? Because in the context of those type of trading, usually they just depend on the stock chart, right? Depend on the price movement and use what is so-called technical analysis to make decisions. So then, why is fundamental analysis important for stock investor or trader? How does it come into the picture? Before we dive into answering that question, right? I think perhaps it's also good for people who are new to stock market to give them a bit of idea of what is fundamental analysis.
Okay, sure. Okay, so fundamental analysis, right? What it means is that it's actually a method to analyze the intrinsic value of a stock.
Yep.
Okay, that's one of it. And the other thing that we will also use fundamental analysis for is to also determine the future potential of a stock.
Okay.
So basically, those are the two main areas we actually will be focusing.
Right.
Using fundamental analysis to determine. Yeah.
So you mentioned two keywords there. Number one is intrinsic value. Second is the future potential, right? So can you elaborate more about these two keywords?
Okay. Intrinsic value. Okay. The easiest way to look at it is actually the value. So in this case, what we're actually looking for is actually the current value of a stock.
Okay.
So just to give you an example, when you look at a stock chart, okay, there's always a price, right, attached to a stock. Now, how are you able to determine is that the true value of a stock? Well, it's just a value, right? There's no way for us to really determine the true value of the stock. The true value of the stock could be less, but the stock chart has no way to tell us that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you can't tell the real value of something by just looking at the chart.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, you need fundamental analysis. So with fundamental analysis, you will be able to determine the true value of the stock.
Yep.
Yeah. And the way to do it is you look at the accounting of the company.
Right.
Yeah. And that will be able to tell you, the value. The true value of the stock. It could be less than what the stock chart is actually telling us.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Okay.
So that is one thing about fundamental analysis, and the second thing that I mentioned is the future potential. Yes, correct. So with the future potential, what it means is that based on the stock chart itself, how are we able to determine what is the future potential of this particular stock?
Okay.
So if you look at the stock chart, and currently the stock price is $100. So how are you able to determine, how much can this stock price appreciate over the next 6 months, 1 year?
Okay.
Are you able? It's very difficult for us to actually determine that based on the stock chart.
Yeah. Because when you look at a stock chart, what you could tell is what happened before.
Precisely.
Right? The chart doesn't tell you what will happen in the future.
Yes.
And to know what will happen in the future, you have to look into the business potential in terms of, for example, what will be the future demand for the product that this company is producing.
Correct.
Right, for example.
Yeah. So in actual fact, what we'll be actually looking at is, as an example, you can actually look at the sales growth, sales projection of the company, for the next quarter, the next 6 months, the next 1 year. Yeah, that will actually give you an indication, whether the company will be growing in terms of sales or not. Yeah, so not only in terms of sale, you can also have a projection in terms of the company's profitability. Yeah, you know, like for example, usually a CEO will like, you know, give a forecast, you know, whenever they have earnings, you know, on a quarterly basis, they will actually, you know, share with the investors, you know, what will be the earnings like for the next quarter or for the next year, for example. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's the more technical explanation of fundamental analysis. And Sam, can you put it in an even more layman term?
Okay, let me give you this scenario.
Yeah.
Okay, there's this burger store in your neighborhood.
Okay.
And you really like the burgers because it's really tasty.
Okay.
You probably have it at least once or twice a week. Okay, and you decide that you know you want to do the business. You know you're interested to take over the business.
All right.
And you want to make an offer.
Yes.
You know, to the business owner.
Okay.
So how would you go about it?
All right. So as a businessman, you know, first I want to find out how much is the business worth at this moment. So I'll like have to find out, you know, how much is the store if I were to buy it, you know, how much is all the equipment.
Yes.
And then also like how much sales is it currently making, right? So from there I will know the present value of the business, which is, you know, like the intrinsic value you talk about, right?
Yes. Yeah, so that's a very, very good look at that explanation. So when you want to make an offer, right, you will start with what you can see.
Yeah.
Right. Obviously, when you go to the store, right, you see the guy, you know, preparing the burger. You know they have burgers, they have buns, right, and they have the equipment to cook the burgers, right, and then they have helpers, you know, to prepare the burgers, and then also pack the burgers for you, right? Yeah. So that is always the start, which is the intrinsic value or the value, you know, in this case, the value of the store.
Yep.
Okay. What else? You know, other than intrinsic value, which what you can actually physically see, feel, and is there any other thing, you know, that you don't actually see yet? Okay, but then it may actually have an impact to the price that you want to offer to the owner. Something that you may want to check. Yeah.
Well, you know, as a businessman, if I'm interested to buy that stall, it probably means that I see a future potential, as in, you know, I'm probably expecting that there'll be more and more people buying the burger since it's so good.
Okay.
Maybe the neighborhood is getting more and more residents. So these are also the factors I'll look at. In order to come up with an offer, you know, so I have to consider the future potential as well.
Yes, precisely. So that is actually the hidden part, you know, of the business that you don't see, you know, when you go into the store.
Yes.
Yeah. So you obviously have to look at that. Maybe you may want to actually have a chat with the owner. You know, they may actually have a seasonal pattern to their sales. You know, they may have good months, they may have so-so months, and then they may have great months. Right? So like for example, just to give you an example, like you go into a shopping mall, you know, during the Christmas or Chinese New Year time, you know, they have special sales. Obviously, sales is going to be, you know, up, you know, what do you call that, you know, over the roof. Just an example. Yeah, so yes, that is look at the future growth potential, of the business. So that is definitely something that will need to be taken into consideration, you know, before a price, you know, is actually being offered.
So now let's address that question, right? Why then is fundamental analysis important for a stock investor or trader? Now that we know the definition.
Okay, how the fundamental analysis will actually help a trader is that when you actually looking at the stock chart, as you mentioned earlier, right, all you can see is what is the current price and the historical price, but not the future price. Right, the thing is, what I've actually shared with you earlier, with fundamental analysis, you have an idea, you know, with the projections from the fundamental analysis, you know, in terms of trend, you know, whether the stock, you know, will continue to go up, or there is actually also a potential, you know, the stock may not continue to go up, it may actually go sideways. because in terms of sales projection or profitability, it may not be actually continue to go up. Yeah, so based on that, you have an idea,
right.
You know, what is the likelihood,
right.
Yeah, of that actually happening.
That's really logical. But then, you know, there are some people who ask, right, well, by just looking at the stock chart, right, you know, I draw my support resistance trend line, I actually can tell whether the price is gonna go up or down. So why can't I just trade based on that?
The short answer to that question is you can. Okay, not to say you cannot, but if you have another piece of information like what I just shared with you in terms of fundamental analysis, you know, so you have information about the sales of the company projection, you know, the profitability of the company's projection for the next, you know, quarter, year or whatever, right? Wouldn't that give you more confidence and conviction on how you're going to trade this stock?
Definitely. I think that will also increase the probability of success as well.
Precisely.
Right? Yeah.
Precisely. You got it, Terence.
All right. So you know, I think it's important for investors or traders to understand that yes, you can look at stock chart or do your technical analysis to have a short-term view of where the price is going to go.
Yes.
But if you want to take a longer-term view, you've got to look at fundamental analysis.
Precisely.
And when you are able to combine the two information, where you know that, you know, in the long run, this is the direction that the price is going to go.
Yes.
Then you will have the confidence and conviction to invest or trade, whether it's for just a short term or long term. You know, would that be a fair statement?
Yes, very fair indeed. Well, the thing is, that's how I've been trading.
Yes.
Okay, and that's how I've been taught by BI to do it. And I must say that it has worked very well for me. And I personally believe in it. And that's how I trade. Yep.
So there you go. For stock investors and traders, what we advocate is that fundamental analysis is as important, or if not more important, than technical analysis. You got to combine both the knowledge. And if you'd like to find out more, join our next seminar, Global Investing Made Simple. We will actually talk more about these in more details. It's actually part of our 4-step formula to consistent and accelerated return in the stock market. All right, so thank you very much for joining us. See you in the next video.